What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make an Impact podcast with real stories, real people, and real impact. My name is Stephen Turnbull, an entrepreneur, husband, and father on a mission to empower individuals to share their stories so they can make an impact on you. Quick ask before we start and jump into today's episode. If you're watching this, please follow along, hit subscribe, join us on the Spotify, check us out on the Facebook page. We have a super exciting guest today. We have Sheriff Robert Maciol, who is the Oneida County Sheriff. He's been serving our community in law enforcement as a mayor at one time for 37 years. We just learned more of who is the sheriff, what does he do, his family, all that good stuff. We dove right into who he is. You're really going to enjoy this conversation about lifelong service. We thank him for his service, and we're glad he joined us. Now into the sheriff's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make an Impact podcast. Super special guest today. I have Sheriff Robert Maciol. I said it right.
You got it.
Maciol rhymes with facial. That was the key.
That's it.
Thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely.
How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Good. So we wanted to just have you in, talk about yourself and your 37 years of service and all that. But I wanted to back up to just tell us how it all started. You know, did you always dream of being in the police force and all of that? And then we can work our way back to where we are today.
So I grew up not far from here. I grew up in New York Mills. I'm a New York Mills guy. Quick history. My mom just passed away this past December. She was 90, but my mom was born and raised in Holland Patton. She was one of 11 kids, lived on a farm she was born in 1935. So back in the 30s and 40s, she lived on a farm. Like I said, she was one of 11 kids. They struggled, they were poor, and all the kids had like a lot to do. And my mom, being the oldest of the 11 kids, she was like, taking care of everybody. And when she turned 18, she hightailed it off that farm. She didn't want to stay there.
Yeah.
So she went to Utica. She met my dad. My dad was in the Marine Corps, World War II. He had gotten out of the war, got a job with General Electric here in Utica. He worked there for about 40 years. My dad passed away about 13 years ago. But anyways, my mom met my dad in Utica, and they ended up settling. They got married and settled in New York Mills. So that's how I ended up being a New York Mills guy. Mm-hmm. Went to school just down the road here at New York Mills, K through 12. When all the years growing up, I wanted to be a dairy farmer because my mom came from this family of farmers. My grandfather, when he was alive, all my uncles had farms. Even though my mom left the farm at a young age, when she was raising our family, I have two older sisters, we always went back to the farm on weekends and holidays and stuff like that. So at a young age, I got hooked on the farm thing real early, got attracted to it. Started working for my uncle on his farm. Never lived on the farm, but I worked for him on weekends and all summer from the ages of probably 13 until I was almost 18. Mm-hmm. So, and that was it. I wanted to be a dairy farmer growing up. And thank God I never did that because it's a tough life.
Yeah.
They don't make a lot of money. We could spend a whole show talking about farming stuff. But anyways, so like I said, I always wanted to be a farmer. Knew that because I didn't live on a farm, that wasn't going to be a reality. So graduated from high school here at New York Mills, trying to figure out where I want to go in my life. Signed up at MVCC, enrolled in general studies initially. Was going to start college. Then I got an offer from a father of a friend of mine to manage a plumbing store, believe it or not, on Main Street in New York Mills. Didn't know a thing about plumbing. And so I took this job as an 18-year-old, making a significant amount of money, running it back then anyways, running a plumbing store. And it was kind of funny because my boss at the time, he joked with me. He said that I'd make a good politician someday because he loved the way I could talk to people and sell products, and I knew nothing about it. And I was doing, selling all these plumbing things, plumbing fixtures, and again, never had a thing to do with plumbing. But so I took this job, and that was going well. Still wanted to do something for the community, so I joined the New York Mills Fire Department at the age of 18. I hung around there a lot before I was 18, but because I wasn't old enough, I couldn't officially be a member.
Sure.
So I joined the fire department, went through a whole bunch of training back then. Back then, they were still running Firematics. I don't know if you've ever watched Firematics racing at the field days. Used to do a lot of that with these guys. And so those couple of years from 18, 19, and 20, while I was a fireman, the police station at New York Mills was hooked onto the firehouse got to know some of the police officers. They talked me into riding around with them in a police car some night, or some nights. So several nights I rode around in a police car. I'm like, you know what, this is pretty cool. I think I want to be a cop. So back to my plumbing store, managing the plumbing store every day. We had a coffee pot on the counter. It was like the community coffee pot at the plumbing store on Main Street in New York Mills. Everyone would come in, get a cup of coffee, and solve all the world's problems. It was almost like a coffee shop, but it was the plumbing store. And the police chief at the time would come in, and he knew that someday I wanted to be a police officer. One day he comes in, he says, "Hey, we've got an opening. Are you interested in joining the police department?" And I wasn't quite 20 yet. And I said, "Well, I'd love to." And he's like, "Well, got to wait till you're at least 20. So I believe it was like the day after I turned 20, I got hired in the police department in New York Mills.
Wow.
Started working, riding around in a patrol car, learning the job. The way we work it now, you have to go to the police academy before you can do police work.
Yeah.
Back then, it wasn't mandatory. So I actually
You had enough passenger seat time.
I worked the police job for about 6 months before I actually went to the police academy. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. I remember I can tell you the first person I arrested. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember his name and everything. I pulled a car over. The guy was drunk. He had a whole bunch of tools in the back, and in the back of his car. They ended up being stolen tools from the construction of the Utica Business Park, believe it or not.
And this was how soon into the job? You were just right.
Weeks into the job. And I had not received any training or nothing. And I remember calling my supervisor because I was out alone. And he said, "If you need anything, call me." So I had this car stopped, and I actually had to reach over. On the front seat was a bag phone. This thing was like the size of a small carry-on bag you take on an airplane. You unzip it, you take the phone out, and you dial the phone. And I called him, and he walked me through the arrest. But it was, but anyways, I immediately fell in love with that job. I mean, being a cop, it's every day is different. Mm-hmm. There's not a single day that goes by that you don't go to work knowing that you're going to make a positive difference in someone's life. From helping someone that may have a broken down car to solving a crime, whether it's minor or serious. I mean, any crime that we, or any investigation that we have or crime that we have, there's a victim to that. And, I'm old school. So our first job is to protect the victims.
Right.
So there's just a significant amount of satisfaction being a police officer. It's a very noble career. So I was off and running. Like I said, started at the age of 20. I'm 57 now. That's pretty much all I've ever done as far as a professional career goes. Mm-hmm. It's great. I still wake up in the morning excited to go to work.
Yeah.
And the older I get, it's a little harder to get up in the morning. But I'm very excited about going to work every day. I promise people all the time, especially in the role I'm in now as an elected official, I promise people the day that I wake up and say, I'm not into this today. Right. That's the day that I say I'm done.
Sure.
And I'm not there yet. I'm fully energized. And I just, like I said, I just love being in a role where I can make a difference in the community. The community's done a lot for me. They gave me a ton of opportunities. I'm in a position as a police officer, we can help people. And like I said, there's nothing like the satisfaction you get from helping people.
So it was 2011 when you first became the sheriff.
I was elected in 2010, took office January 1st, 2011.
2011.
At some point in time, and I've always had an interest in politics. I remember when, growing up in my house, with my dad was, like I said, a World War II veteran, very in tune with not only local politics, but world politics. We were very routine in our household. Dinner was at a certain time. We watched the news at a certain. I always remember that, and I always had an interest in that, and so politics interested me a lot. I early on in my police career, if you talk to some of the guys that are still around that started or were already working when I started, I right out of the gate, I said, I love politics. My heart is in being in doing police work. I want to be the sheriff someday. And because it's it's the only elected law enforcement position.
Sure.
And everyone told me I was crazy. I mean, in New York State, there's only 57 sheriffs. In the entire country, there's only 3,081, I think. So there's like 3,100 sheriffs out of 300 million people. Wow. And they're like, this is just, it's not going to work. And I said, well, I'm determined. I'm going to try it. I tell people that all the time, even now in my role, when I interview new recruits or hire new people, I always tell them, I can't promise you if you're ever going to get a promotion or be in a unit that you want to be in, but I can promise you that if you work hard and you stay out of trouble, good things will happen to you. Yeah. working hard and being honest. I mean, we make mistakes every day. I make mistakes every day.
Sure.
I tell people, just own them. When you make a mistake, own it. And it can be so much easier when, But yeah. So I put my mind to it. Gosh, probably 1998-ish. I said, you know what, I'm going to run for sheriff someday when the time is right. And back then I had a couple of political mentors, I guess I could call them. And they said, well, you're never going to get elected in Oneida County unless you change some things because it's a Republican county. I'm not a Republican. Most people don't even know that. But that's number one. But I figure, you know what? And the only reason I am a Democrat, and as corny as this sounds, my dad, who, like I said, my dad was the most important male person in my life. He made me register as a Democrat. He made my sisters register as Democrats. Granted, the Democratic Party today is not what it was when my dad was alive. Yeah. And he's probably pretty upset about that. But he said, don't ever change, because his feeling was the party, you have an obligation to help people in a time of need. They have an obligation to help themselves too, but if someone's on the ground, we have an obligation to pick them up and help them get going again, and then they got to take off from there. Sure. So that's kind of the motto I always followed, and it fit right into what I was doing every day. So that's how I ended up registering in this party, and I've never changed since the age of 18, because I said, you know what, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and people are going to know who I am and what I believe in, and they can look at my job performance and the way I voted on things and whatever the case may be, and they'll make a decision if I'm the right guy or the wrong guy. Yeah. So knowing that I had to run for some kind of public office to get a reputation politically in the community, in addition to my law enforcement position, I made a decision to run for mayor of my hometown, New York Mills. So at that time, I could back up a little bit, but I started my police career in New York Mills, worked here for a few years full-time. Then I transferred briefly to the Whitestown Police Department because it was more money. And then I transferred another time to the Whitesboro Village Police Department. I stayed there. I worked there full-time for 19 years before I went to the sheriff's office. But I stayed on New York Mills PD part-time, so I still had my hands in my hometown. But when I made the decision I got to jump into politics, I decided I'm going to run for mayor. I had to give up my New York Mills police job. I ran for mayor in 1999, and I won, and I took office in 2000. I was the youngest mayor ever elected in New York Mills.
Yeah, so how old were you when you were first mayor?
30, 31, somewhere around there. I ended up serving almost 12 years as the mayor. And while I was a police officer in Whitesboro and kind of putting my plan together to...
now, at that time, were you telling people this is the plan?
No.
Or was it just like, this is what I...
Well, I was and I wasn't. There's a newspaper that was printed... I don't know if you remember Carl Ellenberg. He was the mayor of Rome for a long time. Okay. He passed away. But Carl, after he got out of the mayor's office, he had a newspaper. I have it at home. He since passed away, but I can't remember the name of the paper. But anyways, he interviewed me as the mayor of New York Mills. And I remember I had a pink shirt on. It was a cover page on his paper that month, pink shirt. And he called me Macho Man because Maciol, pronounced in Polish because it's a Polish name, is Macho. Okay. So he called me the Macho Man. But in that article, he said, what do you want to do after you're the mayor of New York Mills? And I said, well, I'm going to be the sheriff. So I put that out there years before I ran for sheriff. So I kind of did and didn't, you know. Sure. But so I had that under my belt. Someone also talked me into running for the school board in New York Mills while I was the mayor and a police officer. So I said, I don't want to do this, but I did it anyways. Yeah. First, I got an opinion that I could legally hold that position, that it was compatible with the other things I held. And I think it was either the state attorney general or comptroller, one of the two, wrote back and said, they don't conflict, so you can do that. Yeah. So I did one term on the school board. I think everybody should do that. Yeah. It was a little frustrating for me because a lot of the people on the board had agendas that had nothing to do with what you're doing in the school. But it was a great learning experience for me. But then I made up my mind that I'm going to run for sheriff. At the time, the sitting sheriff was running for another term, Sheriff Middaugh. And so I was initially not in 2010, but in 2006, I decided I'm going to run for sheriff. So I was in the race for about 2 months. I never really completed petitions because there was another Democrat running at the time. And we decided I'm going to wait this one out. Yeah. I'm glad things happen for a reason. So I waited that one out. And then in 2010, Sheriff Middaugh announced his retirement. I announced that I'm going to run for his job. a Republican announced that he was going to run for the job. Dave Townsend, I don't know if that name rings a bell at all. He was a retired member of the sheriff's office, and he was a 10-term New York State assemblyman.
Oh, okay.
So he announced that he was going to run for sheriff too. So he was the Republican candidate. I was the Democratic candidate back in 2010. Other than my experience as the mayor of New York Mills, I had to work hard to get my name out there.
Yeah.
So we dove into it head first. Started knocking on doors June of that year. Knocked on doors up until the Sunday before elections, and I was on about 12,000 doorsteps.
Wow.
I lost 35 pounds. By the end of that race, I had absolutely no energy left. I had no money left. Dry heaving on. I remember it was in North Utica, in Ward 6 in Utica, knocking on doors, and I was just exhausted because I was working full time. I get out of work at 3 o'clock, put a suit on, go knock on doors. And because I had to get my name out there.
Yeah.
We did some commercial buys and stuff. We didn't have a lot of money, but it was, talk about a grassroots campaign, that first one.
Yeah.
It was as grassroots as it gets. And at the end of the day, we ended up winning that race by not a lot, but we won enough to easily claim victory that night.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't know that night, we didn't know for a whole week. That's the year that we changed voting machines from the old-fashioned ones to the ones where you feed the paper in now.
Yeah.
And they had a malfunction in reading them. So we knew we won, but it wasn't official for like 7 or 8 days later.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing I think would be cool is to talk to us about the sheriff's department itself and how many moving pieces are inside of the sheriff's department. I think
huge.
So many people can think they see the cop cars out there and say, oh, they're out there doing traffic stop and all this, not the jail operation, all the education, all that stuff. So just take us behind the curtain if you can. On
So the Oneida
department.
County Sheriff's Office started in 1798. There was one sheriff. He rode a horse, and he had 2 cells at the jail.
Wow.
So fast forward to today, there are about 540 people that work for me. It's a $60 million budget, annual operating budget. We have a 632-bed jail. We don't have any horses, but we have about 100 vehicles. So it's changed a lot. But typically, the average citizen, they occasionally see the white sheriff's car with the red star on the door patrolling. But the law enforcement division is only one of 3 divisions at the sheriff's office. So within that law enforcement division, you have the uniformed deputies. We have investigators. We have narcotics. We have a warrants unit. We have a scuba dive team. We have a snowmobile patrol. We have a bike patrol. We have a boat patrol. We have boats and jet skis. We have a drone unit. We have a forensics unit. We have a school security unit. We're in every single school district in this county providing security except for Rome, New Hartford, Oriskany, and New York Mills. We cover every other one. Even including Utica. We do the security in the 10 elementary schools in Utica. Utica PD handles middle school and high school. We also, trying to think who I'm leaving off in that one unit, but that's the one that most people are familiar with. So in Oneida County, there's 3 cities. A little trivia question. Utica, Rome, and
Cheryl.
You got it. See, how
about
about that? Huh?
That was quick,
Most
too.
people don't. Most people don't know that, But Utica, Rome, and Cheryl all have their own police departments, so we assist them if they need something. Now, we're in Utica almost every day. We send deputies to ride in 2-man cars with Utica for the GIVE program. That's the Gun-Involved Violence Elimination Program, taking guns off the street. We have a joint SWAT team with Utica and New Hartford. We have a joint dive team with Utica. We have a joint narcotics team with Utica. We have joint hostage negotiators with Utica. We're in Utica every day. We have probably the strongest working relationship with Utica PD than it's ever existed before. Chief Williams and I are friends. We've started our careers pretty much the same time. So we don't primarily patrol the cities unless they need something from us. There's 26 towns in Oneida County. There's only 3 town police departments, New Hartford, Kirkland, and Whitestown. So the sheriff is the primary patrol for 23 of the 26 towns.
Oh, wow.
So we're out there in 23 of the towns giving them their road patrol, We have field offices for our road patrol in Barneville to cover the north, Waterville to cover the south, Camden to cover out west, and then our headquarters in Oriskany. So that's the law enforcement division. Move over to our smallest unit, the civil division. They're housed in the county courthouse in Utica. They handle all process serving, warrants of eviction, property seizures, property auctions, court-ordered auctions, things like that. They also handle transportation of juveniles if we need to. So that's our smallest unit, but they do a ton of work. And then our largest division is the corrections division. Correction officers inside the jail. We have transport teams that take inmates where they have to go. Inside the jail, we have a medical unit. We have a full kitchen unit, kitchen staff, in addition to serving 300 to 350 breakfast, lunch, and dinners every day. So, over 1,000 meals are coming out of there just for the inmates a day.
Right.
We also manufacture and produce all the Meals on Wheels for the elderly throughout Oneida County. That's all done at the jail.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people don't know that. It's a huge savings of money for the county because we have an existing huge kitchen. It's like a restaurant in there.
Right.
But inside the jail, we also have medical services, mental health services, religious services, AA services for people dealing with alcohol abuse or addiction. We have all kinds of drug treatment programs, medically assisted drug treatment programs, you name it. It's all happening. It's like a miniature city inside the jail.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving parts to the sheriff's office that most people never see.
Yeah. As a Clintonian, too, the increase traffic.
We just signed a contract.
I have noticed. I have noticed an increase.
We just signed a contract last year with the Village of Clinton. We just upped it for a second year because they always had their own police department.
Yeah.
And then when the Village of Clinton disbanded, the town of Kirkland took over. Unfortunately, the past few years, the town of Kirkland police have been struggling with staffing. So they just couldn't dedicate a car to the Village of Clinton. So the mayor, actually, she reached out a few years ago. But at the time, I wasn't comfortable with our staffing levels to be able to dedicate a car. But I got back in touch with her 2 years ago when she reached out, and we were comfortable providing a dedicated car to Clinton. We're not there 24/7. I'm not going to tell people when we're there because we don't want to give that away. But we're there almost full time, but not quite. And so we have a dedicated car. We added a zone because we have 8 patrol zones in the county, and we added a 9th for the Village of Clinton. So we have a car pretty much there all the time.
Yeah. When looking up a little research on everything, I noticed how involved you are in the state associations as well. I don't know if that's the correct term for it, but you're chairperson, I think, on
a whole bunch of things. So again, and some of my critics say, well, you should be focusing your time here.
Yeah.
But we have to have a voice in so many different things because we're able to do what we're able to do because if we talk on a lobbying force, I'm a member of the New York State Sheriff's Association. I have been since I got first elected to the sheriff's office. I immediately joined the state association and eventually got into elected office there at the state level, worked my way up, held every position at the New York State Sheriff's Association. And in 2019, I was elected president of the state sheriffs by my peers across the whole state.
That's awesome.
We have an incredible amount of lobbying power with Albany, except for bail reform, but unfortunately, and some other things. But unfortunately, the downstate elected officials control what's happening in our state, and so we were able to have an influence on a lot of the changes to bail reform. Bail reform, it was an overcorrection. I mean, bail reform came out of a real sad case in New York City, and an individual got picked up on a minor charge. A young man got picked up on a minor charge. He got lost in the system. He was in Rikers Island for 2 years on a misdemeanor charge. 2 years. 2 years of all kinds of abuse. Everything you could think of happened to this young man inside the jail. When the system finally realized that he's in there and we got to get him out of here, his charges were dropped and he was released, and he subsequently committed suicide because of the abuse he had taken inside. So that's where bail reform came out of. But bail reform, or reform, I should say, was needed at Rikers Island. It wasn't needed in upstate New York. We didn't need to make such overcorrections to a system statewide. The very people that bail reform is supposed to protect are the ones it's hurting because it overcorrected. But we were able to lobby and to get some changes back. We were able to prove with statistics and whatnot. So to answer your original question there, it's important to have a voice at New York State, at the New York State level. Since then, I've also been appointed. I've received 3 different governor appointments from different governors to different committees. One I was on for several years, the Police Accreditation Council, appointed by the governor to work with police departments to get them accredited, to get them professionalized, and give them state recognition for that. That's a good thing. That builds our reputation. That helps with liability insurance, all that stuff, being an accredited agency. So I'm off of that now, but I had recently been appointed by the governor to the Municipal Police Training Council. We oversee training for police officers across the whole state. And then I also serve on it's for civil service, New York State Civil Service Commission. It's called PERC, Police Exam Review Committee. After tests are given, we look at questions that everybody misses, try to figure out why they missed them to make the tests more compatible to what the majority are, to help, not to help people pass, but to figure out why people are missing questions and what can we do better to get people to score better.
Sure.
So, and all those positions are unpaid, so they're not paid. I'm not getting a paycheck from any of them. And recently I was appointed to 2 committees on a federal level, one for animal abuse and one for border security, which is, even though we live in the center of New York State, there are still, I think it's critical that we have everybody at the table, Republicans and Democrats, to ensure that everyone's being treated equally. Yeah. And at the same time, we're protecting our borders and we're stopping the infiltration of drugs into America. But I'm able to get appointed to the federal level because of my reputation and hard work on the state level. So it kind of works that way. But again, it gives us a voice in Albany and it gives us a voice in Washington, right here from Oneida County.
And you mentioned there, some critics say, well, you should be focusing here. I can imagine you have an immense value of relationships and knowledge that can bring you back to things that are helping you here. I mean,
100%.
And I think you mentioned, like, one of the first things you did when you started was join these associations and got more involved. Yep. Talk to us maybe about just some examples or things that you've worked together and situations that have helped this area because of the relationships you made.
Just networking alone, being able to, well, as simple as if I have guys going out to a different county in New York or a different state to do a warrant execution, I can reach out to specific sheriffs. If we're sending someone to Georgia, right? You know what I mean? I can reach out and make that connection. But also, when we're working with technology, we can see what works, what doesn't work. Probably certainly it was one of the most expensive things we've ever done, but one of the most beneficial things was the advancement of body cameras in law enforcement. We were the second agency in the county to get body cameras. Utica PD was the first. But probably one of the most helpful tools that a law enforcement officer can be equipped with, not only for court purposes and evidentiary purposes, but also, a lot of times people accuse a police officer of doing something. There's no better evidence than the body camera, So just all those things, all those contacts we have, we can, what works, what doesn't work, different laws that work, what doesn't work. One of the most recent things, just as a result of my federal appointment to this animal abuse committee, because that is a thing there's been a significant uptick in animal abuse cases across the country. Now, we don't think anything has changed. It's just that people have become more aware of things and they're reporting more, okay? But we lack in the area of proper training for animal abuse investigations. You know what I mean? Especially big animals, horses and cattle and whatnot. So just from my first meeting with the National Sheriff's Association Animal Abuse Committee, I've got the World Humane Society coming here in April with a full team of people. They're going to offer training to every law enforcement officer, not only in Oneida County, but the 5 contiguous counties. Wow. So, we're bringing training we've never had here before, free of cost, free of no charge. They're coming, that's what they do. But they never heard of us before I introduced myself to them 3 months ago, and they're coming here next month for training. So just things like that are critical to being able to help to better our jobs.
Sure. I know this is a very broad question, so I'll ask it and then narrow it down. Of over the 37 years of service, what's changed in policing? I know there's a lot, I'm sure, but going in specific to that question of like is the DARE system still around? Like the education for the youth of like, these are what police officers are here to do to help and all of those things.
So I 2-part question. So DARE, I actually taught DARE in the Whitesboro School for 6 years, early on in my career. I think 1991 to 1997, somewhere in there. We lost DARE for a couple of reasons. When I say we, I mean in general. It still exists. There are still people that teach DARE. For the 6 years I taught it, to be honest with you, the curriculum never changed. So after the second year, I had it in my memory. I didn't even have to bring the books in with me. Right. And I think we were avoiding certain things with kids for I don't know if they're political reasons or not. But I think that's part of it. And then funding. When the uprising in school violence occurred nationwide and really started to uptick a lot, schools had to make a decision. Are we going to pay police to come in here and teach kids to say no? Or are we going to pay police to keep us safe? So we really can't do both. I mean, if a police officer's in a classroom, he can't be at the front door checking people in. So unfortunately, I think a lot of districts had to make a choice to choose, security or some schools, because we have a presence, like I said, in nearly every school district in this county with school resource officers, which basically have replaced DARE officers, and we have special patrol officers. They're strictly the security ones. I think the schools that can afford it, they have both. We have a couple districts in the county that have both, and some of them, nearly all of them actually, have transformed from SROs to the security, having law enforcement strictly for security. So
Gotcha.
like I said, we have over 120 members of the sheriff's office just in our school security unit.
Yeah.
They're all part-time. I brought them all back from retirement. We're just paying them an hourly rate, but we have we have 62 of them a day reporting for work at different school districts in the county. So, so that I think DARE is kind of gone by the wayside, unfortunately. And the biggest thing with DARE, I taught it to the sixth graders. There was never any follow-up. So I'm teaching kids when they're 11 or 12, but I think you need to have the follow-up in seventh grade, and eighth grade, and ninth grade, and 10th grade.
Right.
And financially, logistically, financially, it just can't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, try getting into a school classroom to do anything today. Their requirements are so much from the state. Their time frame is so small. You can't even build in. Because when I taught DARE, I was right in the schedule with all the other teachers, but they don't have that benefit anymore to do that. So I think the education system kind of boxed itself in too.
Sure.
Because we used to have NECMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children. They used to go to all the schools and teach the kids their 10 points, about staying safe and saying no to strangers. But they can't do that anymore because they can't get into the schools.
Yeah.
Now we have significant mental health issues we're trying to get in to work with kids on. So there's only so much time in the day.
Yeah.
So
from the standpoint of what folks wouldn't realize or think about, walk us through like the day in the life of the sheriff.
Oh boy. My life starts at about 4:30 in the morning.
That's right.
I live on a working farm. So my wife and I both get up 4:30. Well, I get up 4:30. I take 15 minutes to drink a cup of coffee first. She tries to get as much sleep as she can.
Yeah.
We head out. We have a herd of cattle we have to feed. We have 8 horses that we have to take care of. We have dogs. We have chickens. We had chickens till the other day. Something came in and
Oh boy.
slaughtered them all.
My wife's gonna be laughing because we have 7 chickens at home.
Yeah, we had chickens for 11 years and never had a problem. And they were all slaughtered the other day by a weasel, we think. Didn't do anything, just killed them all, left them. But so we have the cows, the horses, dogs, some barn cats. But so I love the farm thing. I could talk a whole show about that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my therapy. So typical day, I try to get to the office by 8. My schedule, depending on what day it is, it usually goes from meetings to meetings. I always take time for lunch. I love to eat. I'm going to be honest with you. I never miss a lunch. And it consists of meetings with employees, meetings with other elected officials, meetings with, I was in Albany yesterday. We actually met with the governor's staff trying to work out some issues. We're lobbying for changes to Tier 6, the state retirement system, because it's a horrible recruitment tool. Trying to hire new people, telling them, when you explain to them the retirement system, it's awful. So, we're lobbying for change to that, lobbying for some changes on earning caps, because retirees, if we bring them back, can only earn $35,000. Then they have to stop working. So we're trying to change that. So I spent yesterday in Albany with several colleagues of mine trying to get increased drug treatment money for the jails, because we have a lot of people on, whether we're talking methadone. We also utilize other long-term medications. So when we release someone into the community, they can be on, they're good for 20 or 30 days till we can get them to a follow-up appointment with an outside service provider. So there's so many moving parts. My day usually goes till 4:30. But at night, there's always a public event. Weekends, there's always, and I've been this way, whether it's an election year or not for me, I don't stop.
You're everywhere.
Because, we try to keep a positive relationship with our volunteer fire departments. There's 57 of them in the county. We have to have them. We can't do this job without them.
Sure.
So we support them in any way we can. We go to their banquets, go to their fundraisers on the weekends. My dad was a veteran, always, made sure that we do all we can to take care of veterans. So in my own little way, we help out, again, going to fundraisers. Last Friday, I helped out at the fish fry at Robert's Post in Holland Patton. Little things like that. I think, and I'd be doing those whether I'm the sheriff or not.
Sure.
But, my fellow electeds, we're blessed here in this community. We have some great people serving in elected office roles. Other parts of the state, I'm around a lot. We're lucky here, But I don't change, whether it's an election year or not for me. I operate the same level. So
yeah. One last question, because I want to respect your time here. I know we were talking before we started recording that your daughter is in the service as well.
Yes.
And has been with Utica for 10 years.
10 years.
So as a father, what does that mean to you?
So my daughter Amanda, my oldest of three, she's been on the job for 10 years. She wanted to be a police officer. We didn't force that on any of my kids. I want them to do, because we have three children, three grown children. We want them to do what they want to do. But she made the choice that she wanted to be a police officer. She got out. She graduated from New York Mills. She went to St. John Fisher. She played field hockey.
Did I.
She played field hockey through her high school career and all through college. She was a goalie at Fisher. The year they won the whatever their conference is that they call it, but the year they went all the way, she was one of the goalies. So I mean, it was an exciting year for her when she graduated. So she got out of college in May. I hired her in the jail. She was number one on our civil service list. She worked for me for 2 months, and then Utica called her. And they hired her July of that year, and she's been there for 10 years.
Wow.
We have a 2-year-old grandson, Lincoln. Lincoln Robert. He's my little man. He FaceTimes me at least once a day, you know, and always puts a smile on my face. He had me laughing this morning. But so yeah, Amanda's she's currently in their mental health unit at UPD. So she's on the afternoon shift. She goes on all the mental health calls. She does a really good job of that. You know, she's not afraid of anything. I don't know if that's good or bad. And but she has a knack for talking. I mean, in this job, and when I say this job, police job, you have to be able to communicate with people. That's 99% of the challenge.
Sure.
And she's a good communicator. She's got it, you know, and that's why she'll do well. But the other two kids, they didn't want anything to do with law enforcement. My son is a methane gas technician at the landfill up in Ava. He monitors all the test sites around the landfill. He's still living at home. Hopefully he stays there forever because he's a big help on the farm. Oh, yeah. And my youngest daughter, she just got engaged, Sydney. She's working on her master's at Utica. And she's a full-time caseworker for Oneida County, a child protective caseworker. But she wants to be a school social worker, so that's her goal.
Very cool.
My wife is a saint. She's a secretary at Remsen Elementary School. My wife and I met on the job. She was a midnight clerk at the Nice and Easy in Whitesboro. I was a midnight cop. That's how we met.
Oh, that's great.
Walked in one night and to get my cup of coffee. And I was never good with opening liners with girls. And I looked at her and I said, boy, you look like someone I just arrested. And after I said that, I'm like, why did you say that? You know?
That was the first line.
Well, her response back was even better. And she looked at me and she said, that was my brother. Oh, so legitimately, I arrested her brother an hour before I met her.
Oh, my God.
Just total coincidence. It was a minor offense. Total coincidence. And, yeah, so we ended up, we've been married for 32 years. It'll be 32 years in May. But she's awesome. She's a hard worker. She grew up completely different than I did. She had a rough upbringing. She was taken out of her home when she was a little girl, placed in a foster home on a working dairy farm, ironically, at the Humphreys Farm on Tibbetts Road in New Hartford. Yeah. Brymer and Wendy Humphreys are her foster parents. She'll tell you that was the best 6 years of her childhood. So when we started dating, we were sharing this farm thing in common, you know, our childhood stories, and we had this farm thing in common. So that was our goal. Someday we wanted to get our own farm. And she wanted a horse. It was her dream to own a horse. She has 8 of them now, so I think she got severely addicted to the horses. Yeah. Because they're a lot of work. They're big, and most of them are retired race horses. Oh, okay. Yeah. So So like I said, my life came together really cool.
Last question. You just reminded me of that, or made me want to ask this. So 2 things we've talked about: the farm as something that was always the goal, and being the sheriff, and you've achieved both of those. For somebody that's younger in life, starting a career, starting a family, what piece of advice would you get them about chasing that North Star?
Don't ever underestimate the capabilities that you have. I was lucky. Like I said, I came from a very loving, structured home. We didn't have much money. I mean, we had very little money. But that didn't matter. Sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was blessed. I mean, my mom took care of our family. We always had, dinner on the table. But, we were just hardworking. I was working since I can't even remember, right out of the gate, started working. So my advice to anybody is don't ever underestimate yourself. Work hard, stay out of trouble, and good things will happen to you. That's proven time and time and time again. And you can't get discouraged. It's tough. You live a public life. You got to have thick skin. Yeah. My skin is as thick as it gets. Yeah. Because, I get a ton of positive feedback from people out in the community. But I also have those people that just don't like me. Most of them are disgruntled former people we've crossed paths with, but it is what it is, you know. But I put my head on a pillow every night, knowing that I did the best I could that day. My conscience is clear. But like I said, work hard and stay out of trouble. And
the thick skin probably helps with a February morning at the farm.
It does. Yeah, it does. It's been the last 2 winters have been pretty rough.
Yeah.
The mud season is here. It's we live on a wet farm when it's not wet, and we have mountains of snow still left there, mountains. But so we enjoy it. I mean, like I said, the farm is it's good therapy. Sometimes people come up to visit and they don't like the smell, but that doesn't bother me one bit. You know, being around cows and horses. Horses are awesome animals. They can read you like a book. It's amazing. A horse can sense your heart rate from 20 feet away.
Wow.
So that's why we always tell people, be calm when you're around the horses, and they'll pick up on it right away. Because if you're nervous, they're going to get nervous. Yeah. And they just want to be able to trust you, you know. And it's sort of like that good friend that you got. You know,
sure.
I mean, you know when you got someone you can trust. And a horse is about as faithful as it gets when it comes to friends. Yeah.
Well, Sheriff, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
That was awesome.
I really appreciate it, and appreciate the service you've done over the last 37 years. Thank you so much for the service to the community. Everybody, that's another episode of the Make an Impact podcast. Until next time, go out there, lead with purpose, and make an impact in someone's life today, even if that's your own. My name's Stephen Turnbull. We'll see you next week. Take care.